Hello there and welcome to another video from me and Mad About Hoovers. Now there hasn't been a video for a little while. People might have noticed or they might not have noticed. I haven't done one for well over a week, and as I did say on previous videos, I am going to be cutting down the number of videos that I do drastically. Because simply put, I haven't got the machines to review anymore. I've done pretty much reviewed every machine in my collection that's upstairs. So we've got to cut down the number of videos that I do to maybe once in a while when I get a new machine, or if I want to do an update on a machine, or maybe the odd daily clean here and there, but I will not be doing uploads every few days like I used to be. It's going to be at least maybe once a week at most, if that. What we're going to do today is we're going to be talking about the Dyson Light Ball that I bought, that's now I've had for 2 months. And what I'm going to do today is a 2-month review on this. I'm going to be going into it, what you get with it, the features of it. Because obviously now I've had it for 2 months and had a chance to use it, and yesterday I washed the pre-motor filter for the first time because it started to get a little bit dirty in there, and that was the first time in 2 months that I'd done it, and I had to clean out all the canister here for its review today. But it's been a very good cleaner so far. There have been a couple of issues which I will be going into, but essentially they do make a pretty good purchase for the money that I paid, which was $199.99. And Argos now don't do the Multifloor version for the same price that this was. It's obviously gone back up to over £300 now. I think it's $339.99 this is in Argos now, and I think Curry's is the same. But what Argos did was they put the animal version of this on promotion, and basically the animal version is exactly the same as this, except it has a purple bin instead of a yellow one, and it includes the tangle-free turbine tool, which is this tool here, and it's also the one with the quick release. So we can't use tangle-free tools that came with previous models unless you have one of these, which is an adapter that Dyson will supply that will clip into the end of the hose on this, that enable you to use your older style tools with this machine. So if you do have an older style tangle-free turbine tool from an older machine, you can get one of these from Dyson. It's the adapter for the quick release that adapts to your tools, and what it will do, effectively, let's say that we've got an old style tool here, okay? Now this just happens to be off my handheld in the kitchen, but it uses the old style of adapter, basically, we say. But if I wanted to use that on that machine, I wouldn't be able to unless I had this adapter, and then all it would do, it would click into there like that, and then I would be able to clip that onto the end of the hose on the machine, so that I could use that dusting brush if I wanted to, or I could use whatever tool I had. If it was the older style such as that and I had that adapter, I could use those on this machine, but otherwise you can't, and the machine doesn't come with one of these adapters, okay? This tool I got with my Dyson Big Ball Animal. That came with this, and because that uses the same fittings as this, I was able to interchange the two. Right. So as I say, this is in Argos at the moment in the animal version. I think it's 209 at the time of making this video. I think it's $219.99. So they put it up slightly from the $199. I think all across the Black Friday week, the animal version of this was $199.99, but it's gone up. There are other Dysons on promotion at the moment, but this version here, the animal is exactly the same, and you just get that, as I say. So that actually works out at reasonably good value, even at $220. If you get the animal version, which is the cleaner and this turbo tool, which is £35 on its own, if you was to buy that separately, then that still works out at good value for $220. So if I get the camera off the tripod, then we will go into have a quick look at the machine. And this is, I say now, I have used this a fair bit. It has been down here for the last 2 months, and I have prioritised using this. You haven't seen many daily cleans of late in the last couple of weeks or so, mainly because I've been using this one more. And the cylinder over there, I will be doing a 2-month review on that one shortly as well, which is the big ball kinetic, not the kinetic, sorry, just the big ball animal. I'll be doing the 2-month review on that in the next week or so. And at the moment though, this one is the one we're looking at, and as I say, this is the light ball. It came out a few months ago now, so it's still a fairly recent model. I know Roger from Ibasiac has just done a review on, or an unboxing of his, and he's quite pleased with his. But what I did notice on it is one of the problems that, before we just go into this, one of the problems I've had with it, and it was really, really irritating me, was the fact that it started to creak. And I noticed it straight away on Roger's video from Ibasiac, when he was moving it forwards like this, and all the time you were moving it about, it was creaking from the bottom, a really annoying creak, like a plastic on plastic, and I could hear it on Roger's one when he was moving it around, and I thought, well, mine's doing exactly the same thing. And what I've had to do is to start greasing the ball, basically, to stop all this creaking from happening. So if I take off the bin, just like so, the area where it's been happening is actually inside this part here, and it happens between this part of plastic here and the part that's just inside it. So if I recline the machine by pressing it down, what we can see basically is this part here slides in and out of this part here. So as I move this up and down, you can see that plastic part there, and it slides inside and out, in and out of that cover. And what I had to do, it was actually this part here that was making the creaking noise against this part here. So I've had to put, I don't know if you can see it actually, but there is some spray grease all along here. I put some spray grease along there, along here, and also along that other side there. And once that's worked its way underneath this part, it actually stops the creaking. Now, as I say, it's very, very annoying when they start doing this, and I would imagine that more of them will do it as well, because they're all being made around about the same time. But a little bit of spray grease or a little tiny bit of oil, don't go too mad with it. I wouldn't use WD-40 either, because it dries off too quickly. I just put a little bit of grease, spray grease. And as that then works its way backwards and forwards, in and out of the cover like so, it goes in nice and smoothly and there's no creaking. And then we can put it up straight. One other thing that I have noticed as well, if I just put this back on, you have to be careful when you stand these things upright. You need to make sure that it is stood vertical like so. Is if you leave it leaning back slightly and somebody comes along and knocks into it, A, it could fall over, but B, is that yoke pivot lock, I think they call it, can sometimes pop out like that. Even when it's not in the recline position like so, the wheels are still where they should be for the upright lock position, but because there's a bit of play in there, if you leave it with the back stood back slightly like that and then knock it, that pivot lock will come out like this, and then the machine can not fall over. So that is not a very, very secure fit inside there, that pivot lock. Now if the machine is stood exactly vertical and then you try and move it, the pivot lock there will not come out. But if the machine is just moved slightly backwards like this, then when you knock it, it can sometimes drop out like this without being reclined. So that is not particularly good, the way that pops out of there like that. And you can see it does it every time. So you have to make sure that when you're standing it upright lock, that it is genuinely as upright as you can possibly get it. and then if somebody does knock it, that won't come out. So that is a little bit of a niggle as well. And I only noticed that when I knocked into it the one day, and it fell over, and I thought, why has that done that? And then I looked at it, and it was that reason. And these weren't reclined, as I say. You know when they're reclined because it clicks. What there is inside here, there's actually a very strong magnet that holds those wheels in the upright lock position, and when you push down on the handle, you can hear that magnet release. Okay. Now when it's in the reclined position like this, pardon me, that is when your pivot lock is supposed to lift up so that it will move from side to side. But like I say, there is a little bit too much play in the upright lock position on this, and it can get knocked. Right, so that's two little niggles there. Now, I suppose what we're going to do is we're talking about the niggles first. We might as well, seeing as how I've started talking about those two things. So I've had to put some grease on the top of here to stop it from creaking. And you notice that when obviously you're moving it about like this, and it's really creaky. And if you watch Roger's video of this, you'll hear it when he's moving it about. You can hear it creaking. I'm surprised you didn't comment on it, to be honest. But that's the fix. Bit of grease on there sorts everything out, really. It won't be the first time I've had to put grease on a new machine, because actually every single Vax that I've had in the past I've had to put grease on in various different places when they've creaked. So, one of the other niggles that I have with this machine, and I've had this right from the word go, and I mean the day I bought it, is the location of this upholstery tool. The way it stores on the top of there, that is a definite no-no for me. That is an absolute pain in the arse. It is a ridiculously stupid place to store that, because the amount of times that I knock that off when I'll be moving it around or taking the cable off or holding the cable up and it's just gone flying off the top of there. So what I do, every time I want to use this now, I just remove that straight away and throw it on a chair, like so it's out of the way. Otherwise it just gets knocked off. That position on top of there is not very good at all. They should have kept it down the bottom here like they did on the DC40. That's where it was stored on there. This tool here, I've noticed that the bristles on this tend to get distorted as well. It's how you store this on the side of the machine, and when it brushes up against parts like this or against the cable, it is distorting the bristles on the dusting brush out of shape. This whole setup of this tool on the side of here has not been very well thought through, and I don't like it. I don't like the way that stores on the top of here, and I don't like the way this dusting brush gets damaged on the side as well, like so. You know, essentially the crevice tool on this is too long to be of use when you're using the dusting brush, and that's another niggle that I found the first time I came to use the dusting brush, was the fact that it has to be used on the end of that very long crevice tool, and it's not very convenient. And every single time I use this, I think what a pain in the arse this dusting brush is. So what I might start doing now is to use the one off my handheld effectively, which is this dusting brush here. And when I put it into there, effectively that then is a much shorter dusting brush. Okay, that's a lot more convenient using one of that length than one of that length. So, you know, if you've got one of these tools on a Dyson handheld and you've got an adapter like this, or you can get an adapter, then you can use this type of dusting brush on it then, which is a lot more convenient to use than that one. That's too long, and it's too awkward on the end of that long crevice tool. Okay, so that's that issue. So both of those niggles concerned the onboard tools. What else was there with this? I don't think, to be honest, there was that much more else that I found to be an annoyance with it. There's been a lot more positives with this machine than there has been negatives. And let's face it, I mean, just about every single vacuum cleaner you buy these days, there's going to be negative points to it. No vacuum cleaner is perfect, is it? You know, there's always got to be something that isn't as it should be, or you're not happy with a vacuum cleaner. Now, the fact that this was £200, that was an advantage straight away. It's a cheap Dyson, okay? For what you get, this is very much worth the £200 that you're going to pay. Even despite those few niggles, the squeaking and the creaking from the ball here was easily sorted with a bit of spray grease. This little lock here that sometimes comes out if it's not quite stood dead upright, which obviously is that. I mean, that obviously is a little bit of a problem, but like I say, you just got to make sure it's vertical. But let's think what else. Oh yes, another gripe, and this has been mentioned by other people as well, is that the hose is not long enough to go up a full flight of stairs. It'll go up by usually the top 1 or 2 steps, but it will not go all the way to the top. It is just slightly too short. Dyson was slightly too stingy with this hose. If they'd have made it a little bit longer, it would have been perfect. But as it is, it won't go all the way to the top. And then you've got to take the machine to the top of the stairs and work down from the top. Okay, so that is another negative point. Also, while we're talking about that, some people might think it's a negative, some people might not. But what happens with this switch as well is that every time you switch the machine on, it automatically presses the brush bar on button. Okay? So if you were using this on hard floor all the time and never used it on carpets, every time you turn this machine on, as a default, it turns the brush bar on. So then you have got to turn that button off. So if you look what happens, when I press the red button down, it also presses the grey button with it. See? So it's switching the brush roll on, and then once you switch it off like that, and then you come to switch the machine on again, it switches the brush roll back on. Alright? So that's a little issue there, if you wanted to use it on hard floors all the time. Now, as I say, here's the bin, and I've given it a good clean here, and it's had really good separation on this. And one thing you do notice though is that the shroud, because it's a very fine mesh on this rather than the bigger holes that the older Dysons used to have, is that mesh gets dirty more quickly, and you've got to clean this mesh off, this shroud inside here. So every time you empty the machine, it's advisable to brush that shroud off to get all the dirt that accumulates on there off of that shroud, because that will affect the level of suction. And it definitely will, so you need to clean that every time you empty it. And the way to do that, literally, is to dump the bottom of the bin by pressing the button, like so. And then this grey button on the side, you press that, which I'm going to do now. And twist it round, and then you can take out your cyclone unit. So you can clean out your bin with a cloth or a brush, get all the crap out of there every time you empty. And then you would brush down that shroud, as I say, and make sure that's clean. Inside the bottom of there, that's where your cyclones discharge, so you give that a good bang out to make sure anything that's trapped in that outer tube there. The centre tube is the fresh air tube where the suction comes down from the motor. But this outer part, that's where the cyclones discharge into. And you can see that start to build up inside there. So you give that a bang out over the bin, and you'll see it all come dropping out. Okay, so that's that. Then we're just concerning the filter itself, is to open the lid like so. Now with that I have cleaned yesterday, and it's been drying today, and I've just put it back in. So there's your filter there, and that's 2 months that it's taken me to do that, and it didn't come out that dirty when I washed it in the sink. The actual dirt that came out was very, very minimal. It didn't really need to be washed, but I thought I'm going to wash it anyway. But this once a month, yeah, okay, you might have to do it like that if you used it an awful lot and your house was big and it was really dirty. But in general, you just give it a check. If it doesn't look too bad, you know, you could probably get away with it, because this hasn't been bad at all. And the big ball over there, the cylinder, is even better still. I haven't washed the filter on that, and it isn't even dirty at all. So let's put this back together. We can just clip that back in, like so. you also need to make sure when you push this closed at the bottom that you push it back firmly so that that clip engages that lug into that little recess. Okay, and also make sure that that is wiped out inside there as well, otherwise all the dirt that comes out the bin when you empty it will get trapped in there. Well, some of it will inside here, and when you put it back onto the machine, that dirt will then fall down that hole straight into the motor, and then it'll go through the motor and into the exhaust filter, which I'll take the exhaust filter off now, so we'll turn it over so we can see the exhaust filter after 2 months. And it's a case of undoing this here, because I'm sure most people know now how to take the filter off of one of these. It is a bit long-winded to do. You have to unscrew this for ages. It still won't come off. That's it, there we go. And then we can turn this, twist it, and then lift it up. And as we can see, that is still perfectly clean. There's no dust and no dirt inside that exhaust filter. I can take the little pad out. We can see in there that there's a bit of black in there, which is what there should be. All there should be on that filter is black carbon dust from the carbon brushes in the motor. There shouldn't really be any kind of other dust in there if that filter there is kept clean and you don't forget to put it in, basically. So let's just reassemble this, and whilst I will then put it back onto the machine. So we'll clip that back on like so. So as I say, I don't need to clean that because there's just absolutely no need to clean that exhaust filter every month. I know Dyson say to do it, but they're just covering their own backs. They're covering their own backs, really. We turn that until it clicks, basically. Now here's the brush roll head. This is a little bit dirty inside here. I have had the brush roll out, and we can do that now by pulling that down and then lifting this out. And what I do find is that the dust gets into the end of here, and it accumulates around this part here. So you need, if you're taking it out, to be careful of this. This is a bearing, this is the part that spins round here. So you've got one bearing here and the other one's on the end there. And this can get caked in dirt as it comes in through the end of here. So once in a while it pays to take that out and clean that off. There's a little rubber seal that's supposed to stop the dirt getting any further past that point, but it still does, it still gets past it. So it pays every once in a while to clean that out. But otherwise the brush roll is pretty good. And I am very impressed with this floor head. Although it doesn't have as aggressive agitation as the DC40 Mark II, in fact it's nowhere near as aggressive, but it still cleans very well thanks to these large debris channels here and here. And what I normally would do, and this is how I usually use it, is that in the centre position. So your large debris channels are open on the front, it's not too hard to push it along. If I wanted to do a really deep clean, I would move it onto that, but it's quite hard to push it on a carpet like that. So for normal use, I would use it in that setting. I've never really used it in the minor setting, I've never really needed to. So I just have it in the centre. And any large debris on the carpet, I can then move it across and take it off. So that's talked about the bin, and I think it's a pretty good bin. It's a reasonable capacity. It holds all I need it to hold, so we can put that back on. Click it back onto position. The brush roll, as I say, I've found absolutely no problem with that at all. I really think it's quiet and it's nice and easy to push along with that in the centre position. The motor is very quiet for a Dyson. It's only 80 decibels, this machine, and for a Dyson that is really good. The cable on this is 9.6 metres long, so it's got a really long cable for considering that the DC40 Mark II only had, I think it was 7.5 metres, so this is 9.5 metres. The hose on it, like I say, it's easy enough to get off, but it's not long enough for a flight of stairs, but unfortunately we can't do much about that. I think the handle is, whilst it's still a bit on the pliable side, Okay, this is not as bad as what the DC40 used to be. They have seemed to have made this more substantial, this part here, and it effectively has strengthened up the handle a bit, so it doesn't flex as much as you might think, but you soon get used to it. Let's give it a push round, okay, and we'll hear it in use. I do enjoy using this machine, so for the last 5 minutes or so I will give it a push round in this room, and we can hear it working again after 2 months. So we'll uncoil the cable. And the amount of times that I keep doing that, you know. So plug it in and it comes on straight away because I've been messing around with the switch. Right, so I'm going to just take this off first so we can see this adapter, how that works. So what you do basically is you stick your adapter in that you can get from Dyson, okay? You stick that in the end of the hose, like so, and then you can plug your older style tools into it like that. So then of course we can use the dusting brush then off of the handheld Dyson. This is off the V6, this one that I got the other week. So I can use that now on here using this adapter. That's quite good. And you can, as I say, you can buy these from Dyson if you really need one. Right, let's get the hose back in and we'll push it round. So there we go. There's a little bit of juddering there that I did notice when I was pulling it back across the carpet. That's why I pulled it back very slowly, because the floor head was juddering as I was pulling it back. But there's a lot of cleaners that I have that do that. So, you know, it's not the only one to do it. It's just the way the pile goes on the carpet. But one thing that you do notice, though, and my timer's about to go off on me now, is these wheels. You can hear those and they're a little bit noisy when you're pushing it across the carpet, so I might have to put a spot of grease on the little tiny axles inside those wheels, because they're a little bit on the noisy side. But other than that, would I recommend one of these to anybody? Yes, I would. It's not a bad machine at all. For the money it cost, they're excellent. See you again on the next